Hello, my name is Seghen Yohannes, and today I'll be talking about human genetic engineering. In today's world, technology is present in almost everything that we do. We wake up in the morning, we check our emails, we go on social media. While we're eating, we may catch up on our favorite shows or see what's going on the news. In the bathroom, people have started to read ebooks. Technology is present in every single thing. And so how we decide to use that technology and utilize it in our daily lives is our choice. Along with the growth in technology, there have been rapid developments and discoveries regarding technology utilized in science. And so in a short matter of time, scientists will be able to genetically modify human beings to inherit desired traits. So genetic modification is defined as an organism or crop that contains genetic material that has been artificially altered so as to produce a desired characteristic. Is human genetic engineering ethical? Since this new science is so new to us and we're all exploring it and looking into it, there are definitely lots of good outcomes and lots of bad outcomes. And sadly, the bad outcomes outweigh the good outcomes. So for this reason, I believe that the genetic modification of humans, unless being exercised for medical reasons or to improve one's quality of life, is an unethical practice and therefore should be discontinued. Human genetic engineering, as it is still a relatively new science, could become both harmful and helpful. So medically speaking, there will be several breakthroughs in medicine regarding human genetic engineering, and one of those possibilities, or one of the good outcomes, would be that we would be able to treat illnesses while a child is still a fetus. For example, in today's world, a woman can go into the hospital and check to see if her child has inherited an illness of some sort, or a mental disability, such as Down syndrome or sickle cell anemia. And with genetic engineering, the treatment of these illnesses could begin in the fetus and prevent the illness. Another benefit would be preventing a parent from passing on the said disease or illness to their child. For example, a parent with Huntington's, a disease that causes brain cell degeneration and progressive dementia, has a 50% chance of passing this illness on to their child. So even if the child is not born with this disease, they could still have inherited the trait or the gene. So selective genetic engineering would prevent this passing of selected genes and therefore produce a longer, healthier life for the person. So as these medical advancements could be extremely beneficial, there are several downsides to human genetic engineering. So on the side for the cons, we have social imbalances, a decrease in genetic variation, abuse of the science of human genetic engineering, a reintroduction to the concept of eugenics, and harm to the women and embryos who will be going through the experimentation process. So out of the many potential outcomes of genetically modifying humans, one very pressing possibility is that if the science fell into the wrong hands, humans could be created for potential of constructing of army of sorts. Now, as this may sound very, very unrealistic, it is still a possibility that we have to think about, and it's still out there if we do introduce this new science to the world. And once we release this, it's not something that we can take back, kind of like releasing a can of worms. So to put this more into perspective, say a war were to break out between the US and another country. So now if this type of advanced science were to end up in the hands of a leader with bad intentions, that leader could say order 700 genetically modified humans, or embryos, with their characteristics and features that they desire. So once these children are grown and become young adults, they would be prepared and sent into warfare. So naturally, many people in the US and other parts of the world would be opposed to this idea, as it sounds pretty absurd. But when given time, it would be just like any other new concept that was introduced. After it's been here for a while, people will begin to accept it. So seeing as this is only an assumption to how people would react, what if this concept of engineering an army were perceived in a different light? So, on the other point of view, there would also be people who would be willing to deliver a child into the war for warfare purposes and to fight for their country. Some would be proud and view the child as a way of serving their country, and others would be happy because this would be a source of income if money were to be involved. So aside from these potentially harmful outcomes, there are countless other possibilities as well. So another outcome to human genetic engineering would be an imbalance in social equality. So in other words, people will be divided into two groups, those who have been genetically engineered and those who have not been genetically engineered. As stated earlier, genetic engineering is the act of artificially altering organisms to produce desired characteristics. So when given the option to deliver a genetically modified child and a normal child, many will choose to give their child certain good traits and characteristics, therefore resulting in an idea of super babies. So these genetically engineered beings, when viewed in comparison with the average human, would then attain superiority over the other group. Along with that, it is no doubt that only the wealthy upper class would be able to afford such a procedure, meaning the top 5% of people in America. So considering these factors, the only outcome that we can think of would be social chaos. So when we trace back into history, this kind of social divide that we have, so genetically modified and ungenetically modified, could be related to the concept of eugenics. And so eugenics was first introduced in the year of 1883 by a man named Francis Galton. So the basic concept of eugenics is to improve human population by controlled breeding, with the purpose being to increase the occurrence of desirable heritable characteristics. Oftentimes, the theory of eugenics is linked to Darwinism, which is the theory of evolution of species through natural selection. So thankfully, the concept of eugenics were deemed as unfavorable when the Nazis pursued it in World War II. If genetic engineering of humans were to be pursued with such intentions, America's progressive mindset would not be taking a step forward, but a step back instead. Another pressing issue with genetic engineering is that it would produce low genetic variation. According to a research study conducted at Berkeley University, it was concluded that without genetic variation, over time, a population is not able to evolve in response to changing environmental variables, making it therefore susceptible to extinction. And so likewise, genetic variation could only be restored through the accumulation of mutations over many generations. So genetic variation can be scientifically defined as the variation in the DNA sequence in each individual's genomes. So, in simpler terms, genetic variation is what makes us all unique in regards to our hair color, skin color, eyes, and all of that. So if genetic variation amongst the human race were to decline, not only would distinction be probable, but the US would experience a loss of multiple beautiful cultures and racial backgrounds as well. America, according to the 2010 census, is approximately made up of 67% Caucasian descent. The other 33% is compiled of cultures from all around the world, predominantly Africa, Asia, and South America. So seeing as the top 5% of wealthy individuals in America is made up of Caucasian men, that means that this lengthy procedure would only be available to those few people. So lastly, there's the direct subject of human genetic engineering, which obviously is the women and the embryos. So as explained before, genetic engineering is a whole new idea to us, and we're still discovering more and more about it every day. And so with the amount of information that is still left unknown, there are multiple consequences that could take place. One consequence would be the psychological damage done to the women who volunteered to carry the engineered embryos when we're first experimenting with it. So as for all the experiments and the testings, the outcome is not always certain. A long-term study conducted at the University of Rochester focuses on pregnant women who had miscarriages or stillbirths 8 weeks, 8 months, 21 months, and 33 months afterwards. So of the women who had miscarriages or stillbirths, it was found that 2 to 3 years afterwards, the women still had symptoms of depression. And overall, the study concluded that even if a woman gives birth to a perfectly normal child after experiencing a miscarriage or stillbirth, she is still at risk of the symptoms of depression. In relation to this study, say that a woman were told her child had a high risk of inheriting an illness, for example, Down syndrome, and could undergo treatment while still in the fetus through genetic engineering. This technology, as we know, is very new, could result in the woman ending up losing her child, or even worse, causing even greater psychological damage. Another medical outcome would be the loss of the embryos themselves, which after the failed human genetic engineering experiments would no longer be viable. So in comparison, a unique study conducted in the field of genetics concerning mitochondrial transfers is quite similar to genetic engineering. So explained by life science, the mitochondria, a cell's source of energy, is home to the small amount of DNA that does not really reside in the cell's nucleus. Mitochondrial transfers are already possible today and prevent an expectant mother from passing down a mitochondrial defect to her soon-to-be-born child. However, though, it has been found that mitochondrial transfers have also resulted in abnormalities in the child when they are born. In simpler terms, in attempting to prevent one genetic disease, we would in turn be creating another. Overall, it is clear that the science of human genetic engineering has too many risks and would come at a great cost. As I stated before, the genetic modification of humans, unless being exercised, of course, for medical reasons or to improve a person's quality of life, should be discontinued and are deemed an unethical practice. As described, if genetic engineering were to be pursued, there would be many, many bad outcomes that would outweigh the good, such as social inequality, decrease in genetic variation, abuse of the science, and reintroduction of eugenics, as well as the damage that would occur to the women and the embryos, which is the first thing that should matter and is really, really important. These outcomes all contribute to the ethical idea of a slippery slope. So the basic idea around the slippery slope is allowing something relatively harmless to take place and begin a trend, so to speak. So once this trend stops, there would be nothing that could stop it, and it would just keep on going and going and going until ultimately we've hit rock bottom. So the last question I have for you is, what do you think about this ethical dilemma? Do you think that we should continue to pursue genetic engineering, or should we take a step back? Ponder on that and see what you think. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below. Thank you so much.